Something strange is happening in America's biggest cities. In Los Angeles, protesters are taking over City Hall, demanding rent freezes and eviction bans.
As immigration raids continue, the LA Tenants Union is calling for an eviction moratorium. They say thousands of immigrants will be unable to pay their bills come July 1st because avoiding detainment is taking priority over going to work.
In New York City, the frontrunner for mayor is demanding government-owned grocery stores, like actual supermarkets run by the city.
Socialist candidate Zoran Mandami, he proposes to open grocery stores owned and operated by the government.
And this isn't some fringe idea. Kalshi shows Zoran Mandani is projected to win the New York City Democratic nomination with a 99% certainty. His platform, rent freezes, public housing expansion, and government-run grocery stores. He calls this a fight on food inequality. But what does this mean for the average American? Because when governments start running grocery stores, when landlords cannot collect rent, when eviction protests are backed by immigration threats, something has clearly broken. In this video, I'm going to break down what's really going on, why these extreme policies are rising, what this means to the middle class, and what I'm personally doing to prepare for this. This is a hell of a lot more than about grocery stores and about rent. This is about survival. Let's get into it. So why is New York City now publicly talking about government-run grocery stores?
We will redirect city funds from corporate supermarkets to city-owned grocery stores, whose mission is lower prices, not price gouging.
It sounds dystopian at first, like something you hear about in Cuba or Venezuela. But the idea is coming straight from an economic plan. In neighborhoods like Bronx and Queens, they're calling food a luxury. Not because it's rare, but because it's unaffordable.
People living in the Bronx experience the highest rates of food insecurity anywhere in the city. Many simply don't know how they'll be able to afford their next meal.
Sadly, it's no exaggeration to say that many of the 1.5 million residents of the Bronx face a daily food crisis.
Private grocery stores have been closing in low-income areas. Big chains are pulling out, rising labor costs, and thin margins.
Kroger is planning to close about 60 stores across the U.S. over the next year and a half.
And when they leave, people are stuck with a $7 bag of lettuce at a local bodega, or 30 minutes to another grocery store. And now AI-driven dynamic pricing is making things worse. Some stores are already experimenting with digital price tags. These tags will change multiple times per day and will dictate and determine how much someone will pay for food. For example, groceries will cost more during peak hours. Some stores are already testing facial recognition to offer different pricing to different people based on how they look and how much money they earn.
There are some grocery stores that have been collecting customers' biometric data.
Let that sink in. Food pricing basically changing by the hour based on what someone looks like. This is a system people are already fed up with. So the argument of public-owned supermarkets is simple. But here's what most people don't realize. Grocery stores already operate on razor-thin margins. The average pre-tax profit is 1.6%. These are not greedy giants swimming in profits. In fact, most stores barely stay afloat. When you consider rising labor costs, increased theft, increased insurance, this is not a massive money grab in this business. Even Kamala Harris, last year, back in 2024, was proposing price controls at grocery stores.
Kamala Harris is set to release her first major economic plan as a presidential candidate later today in North Carolina. It will include, we're told, proposing a federal ban on corporate price gouging for food and groceries.
And at that time, the backlash was massive. Experts warned that price caps might sound good, but they almost always lead to product shortages and reduced service. But the bigger question is, can New York City actually pull it off? And what happens to New York City when they start running food and they start running housing? Now, let's get real. It's not just New York City. Los Angeles is in crisis. Since 2023, the city has received 210,000 eviction notices. Just one county-wide court-based response to rising rent delinquency. In April of this year, 5,427 evictions were filed in LA County alone. Around 94% of them were for non-payment of rent. Not crime, not safety, missing rent checks. And it's not a wild amount of debt. Most of these tenants on average owe $3,988. But that's why you're seeing human resistance, because these aren't hostile tenants in most cases. These are working families stretched thin, trying to survive. Now enter the LA Tenant Union. They've moved from protest signs to blocking courtrooms and blocking evictions. They're demanding full rent relief and a freeze on eviction. And they're also demanding that ICE cannot access their personal information. This is a pressure cooker moment, and it's not just the numbers. This is people's lives being uprooted over a few $1,000s. So here's the real question. When a few grand can cost someone their home, what should the city do? The current pitch in New York is that these city-run grocery stores will be run based on fees that they take from other businesses. But many of these businesses are already drowning. We're talking about retail shops, bodegas, and small restaurants. Most of them working on margins under 3%. Taxing them to run city-run grocery stores isn't just unfair. They are funding their competition that could drive them out of business entirely. While LA is facing an eviction crisis on the ground.
Now at 5 renters under pressure. Evictions are starting to rise in the post-pandemic Los Angeles.
Something very different is happening in New York City, 2,500 miles away. Zohran Mamdani is now becoming a political lightning rod that shot up the ranks in New York City. He's projected to be the Democratic nomination for the NYC mayor.
I will be your Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York City.
And what he is proposing is nothing short of a full rewrite of how New York City will function. His plan to open up and to scale government-owned grocery stores is going to rewrite American history.
I will create a network of city-owned grocery stores. It's like a public option for produce. We will redirect city funds from corporate supermarkets to city-owned grocery stores.
Some say it's great, others say it is a catastrophe. But many New Yorkers are tired of being squeezed for $9 for a stick of butter. But the reality is that Mamdani's plan isn't just grocery stores. His plan is to change America. He's pushing for city-wide rent freezes. Not just rent control, a full halt on rents.
I would freeze the rent, and I've said that because we have close to 2.5 million New Yorkers who live in rent-stabilized housing. These are New Yorkers with a median household income of $60,000.
And it's not just grocery stores that are getting hit hard, it's landlords too. Since 2020, property insurance inside of New York City has more than doubled, jumping from about 6% to 14% of total operating expenses.
You have noticed your homeowner's insurance rates going up. You are not alone. Rates are not just high. There's a much bigger problem. Insurance companies are simply not renewing thousands of people.
The ask by the insurance companies, look at this, anywhere from 4.3% to 99%. Can you imagine a 99% increase?
On top of that, we have roughly $2 trillion worth of commercial real estate debt that is coming due, all inside of the next 18 months. Most of this debt was underwritten at record low interest rates. Now refinancing could become a nightmare. Now the question is, if you were a lender, would you lend money to someone that owns real estate, multifamily real estate, rental properties inside of New York City in this environment? And if so, how careful would you be? How conservative would you be in this environment? Will rents ever be allowed to increase, or will they stay frozen? Or could he propose something more radical, potentially decreasing rents? Policies like this is what fuels a real estate collapse. Supporters say this is the easiest way to combat inequality and to make things better for the everyday person. They claim that this will stabilize neighborhoods. Critics are calling this communism that's incoming. But let's pause and think, why are these ideas getting so much traction when eviction notices are flying in Los Angeles and over half of renters are now considered cost burden? It's not hard to see why radical ideas don't seem as radical to most people. And here's the twist. While one city is fighting to keep people in their homes, another is experimenting with public ownership of life essentials. Is this the future of New York City? of Los Angeles? Or is this a political stunt that will collapse under its own weight? We're watching both unfold in real time. So what do we make of all this? On one side of the country, people are protesting from being thrown out of their homes. On the exact other side of the country, politicians are proposing rent freezes in government-owned grocery stores. And everywhere in between, tens of millions of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in credit card debt.
Surveys have found that up to 2/3 of Americans feel they're living paycheck to paycheck.
And watching grocery prices and everyday living expenses grow by the week.
Americans say they're struggling to manage their finances because of high inflation, salaries not keeping up with the rising cost of living, and heavy debt.
And the solution being offered, whether it's eviction moratoriums or universal basic income pilot programs or publicly owned grocery stores, these are no longer fringe ideas. This is the new America we're being walked into. And all this is being written into law before our very eyes. And who will win in all this? It won't be this small landlord. It won't be this small investor. Not going to be the bodega owner in New York City that's going to win here. It's the institutional investors, the private equity giants, the billionaires, the multimillionaires, and those that are positioning themselves now in front of all this. Meanwhile, job creators like John Paul Mitchell Systems have announced they are leaving California and going to Texas. They said they've had enough. If this keeps going, New York City and Los Angeles will hollow out the middle class, leaving behind luxury condos, mega estates, and government-owned grocery stores. But here's one thing no one is saying. You definitely cannot wait for the system to save you. Policies come and go, politicians change, and markets will continue to shift during the turmoil. What you build today is what you will have to fall back on when times get tough. That's why I'm not just watching this happen, I'm acting on it. I'm focusing on income that does not disappear inside of layoffs. I'm investing in real assets, building real systems that will produce cash flow regardless of the economic uncertainty. Because the future, it's not guaranteed to get easier. I promise you it's going to get a lot harder. And it's going to reward the people that plan ahead. For example, in 2021, I sold a multifamily property that I developed right by USC. And I said back then, when everyone thought the eviction moratoriums were over, that the trouble is ahead. And we're walking into a really big problem in LA. And it makes more sense to sell now and leave. And I did. And looking at everything and how it's unfolding, it was the right play. Presently, I'm inside of Cleveland, Ohio, investing in affordable housing, Section 8. I think government expansion is going to grow radically over the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And as that begins to happen, owning these assets, these affordable properties, I believe is going to position myself, my family, and of course our investors for the inevitable, which is going to be inflation, it's going to be government subsidy expansion, and it's going to be government dependence brought by millions and millions of Americans that can no longer afford basic living accommodations. We're going to see the Section 8 voucher program expand in a really big way. If you have between $500K and $1 million or more, you can click the link in the description below to learn more about what we're doing. And I'll catch you next video.